Good morning. This is Woody here, live from Alderney. Again, the footage might go a bit pixelated because we're using the internet connection, but I'm here in Alderney. This is Braye Bay. That's the hotel I had just spent the night in. And we are wrapping up. We've got about 2/3 of a day filming here. Then we take a flight back to Guernsey, then a ferry back to St. Malo. And the Channel Islands and their experiences in World War II, there are similarities between the islands, and then there are great differences. Here in Alderney, morning Willie, here in Alderney, the civilian population left. So in 1940, the realization that what was happening around them on other Channel Islands, the bells rang out in the town, and the civilians had just hours to get their belongings packed, make their way down and take the boats away from Alderney. And of the 1,500 or so people who were living on Alderney, just a handful remained during the war. One family who ended up doing some work. The husband or the father was working as sort of a guide for the boats and shipping and things like that, you know, and a handful of other people with cattle and things like that. But basically the civilians left. And then they came back. VE Day for us, May the 8th, liberation of Guernsey, May the 9th. May the 16th was when the British forces arrived here in Alderney. And that's the official, you know, freedom of the island again. But the majority of the civilians didn't come back till December. So they have a celebration every year to commemorate that homecoming 7 months after the war came to an end. And you can only begin to imagine just how awful it was for these people to come back and see hundreds of German bunkers all over their island. German bunkers built on top of their Victorian forts, built on top of their houses, in front of their houses. Houses have been knocked down, taken down. Then they found out, of course, about the graves. At least 400 foreign workers had died on Alderney, creating these bunkers. And so the end of the war depends where you are in the world, what the end of the war meant, when the end of the war was, and how life then got back to normal here. So this is Braye Bay, one of the beaches of Alderney, the kind of the most popular one. And people walking their dogs. There was nude swimmers earlier on, but I didn't get that on film. I don't want to break YouTube's algorithm. And I'm going to walk you up. There's Mag there on the bay, on the balcony. Just had her full English breakfast, technically a full Alderney breakfast, but they call it in English. And, you know, this evacuation was unique in the sense that it was nearly the entire population. There were evacuations and deportations from the other Channel Islands. But here, the suffering on Alderney during the war was mostly by people who weren't from Alderney. As I said, these foreign workers who came from 27 different countries. Whereas on Guernsey, Jersey, the suffering there was suffering, hardships, rations. People were arrested for spying and all that sort of thing. It was the islanders who were suffering. But here, it was people dying on this island who had zero connection to that island, except for the fact they'd been dragged from their homes to be a worker. So I'll just pop you over here. That's the harbour over there. And, of course, there's a bunker. This one, at the time, was camouflaged like a house, apparently. Of course, somewhere like Alderney, Guernsey, shipping for years and years. So there are monuments dotted about to various ships, vessels that were sunk in history. Here, Her Majesty's submarine, or His Majesty, 1951, His Majesty's submarine, Fraye, sunk 16th of April 1951. Respectful remembrance of the 75 souls whose names are given here and have no grave but the sea. So this is a post-war submarine. It's windy here, so I'll get out of the way. Get out of the wind. And what we really have appreciated about Alderney is the information panels everywhere. And Caroline, who is our host here, from Visit Alderney has been part of this project. She's been here for 17 years working. I told you how it had been a house, disguised a house. Well, there is the photo of it as a house. And a type of weapon, in this case a Pack 40. And we're realising that Normandy, our home, is really missing a trick in terms of putting information panels up. Of course, there are bunkers in Normandy that are part of museums, Crisbeck Battery, Asville, the Grand Bunker in Ouistreham. But your average bunker sitting in a field on Utah, there's no information about it. Well, here, they're all part of a trail. They're all labelled with information panels, historically accurate historical panels done by the historians. We met and spent time with Colin Partridge yesterday. He's been a main force put up behind these panels. And it's fantastic to see that they are not only preserving their history, but they're putting all the means together to keep it understood as well, so to inform the visitor here. And for me, as an Englishman, Alderney, they say, is the most English of the Channel Islands because it was occupied by the British forces in the Victorian era, building the forts with a naval garrison here, marines, things like that. Obviously, they're not. They're fiercely islanders, but there is definitely a kind of an English vibe here. And walking up into town, as we did last night for our meal, I'm not going to take you all the way up there now. There are blue plaques here. It's amazing how many people that we know from history, different aspects of history, had a connection to the Channel Islands. So there's one up there, a plaque to John Wesley Hardin, I think the founder of the Methodist Church. He stayed here. George Martin, producer of the Beatles fame, lived on Alderney. There's a plaque out there. One of those houses up there, is it a pink one? One of those around the corner was George Martin's house. And Julie Andrews lived on Guernsey, apparently. Sean Connery had a house on Guernsey. So it's obviously been a place that people have been drawn to. We've met lots of people here who consider themselves islanders who aren't from Ireland. Islanders, the lady who served us our breakfast, they was from Kenya. We've had a taxi driver from Latvia. We've had, who else have we had? Thailand. It's obviously a place that once you've moved there, you kind of stay. I hope the wind isn't too bad. So I've come round to where the opposite view of where I was a minute ago. And Alderney is very, very pretty. The sun was out earlier. We had sun, then fog, then now it is now, and then apparently we got sun again later. And there's a then and now shot, which I can't do because I'm walking with you, of this view of the hotel that as it is now. They're like kind of remind me of that, like those fishermen's mews you see in Cornwall and things like that. Oh, JD is in the chat there. You've just filmed this a few minutes ago. Are you not bored with this? And that's the thing, you'd never get bored with this site. So, but you can clearly see the French influence here as well, because there's a pétanque or boule court here, pétanque terrain. So clearly, they have their French influence here as well. And I'll take you over. Phil Blackby was watching to Alderney Railway Station. Now that may seem to have no connection with the war as such, and in some ways it doesn't. The railway was part of the infrastructure the Germans set up to create these massive amounts of bunkers. And they had hoppers to pour wet cement directly into trucks. They had a whole series of stuff here. And this is the cute little blue post boxes here, not red. Here is the railway line and the railway station. Busy with commuters. Clearly, it's 8:50 morning, so I'm going to probably find myself in the hustle of the crowds here. Oh God, it's very busy, isn't it? And they have a train that runs on a Saturday. So a little old chuffy train. And there's even a football team in Alderney. And I forget what the name of the football team is, but the stadium is called Arsenal because it's next to a Victorian gun ammunition storage place called Arsenal. So I reeled a bit at that, but there you go. But I'm going to love you and leave you in a minute. There may or may not be any more live streams today. We'll see. But I've been taking content. JD's been taking content. And as I've been saying, since I started these days ago, we're all here to promote this incredibly brilliant area. And, you know, I would have promoted it because that's what I was asked to do. Even if I hadn't liked it here, I'd have done my job because I'm a consummate professional, I like to think. But we have absolutely loved our time here. Max already talking about coming back, bringing the girls here, staying here for a few days. It'll probably be a bit windy here. Sorry about the sound. Maybe I should walk backwards to go around the corner. Walk backwards to the wind. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be bad, the wind here now. I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll speak to you later on. But this is Alderney, and there'll be lots more content about the Channel Islands coming up on History Underground and World War II TV. We'll be speaking to the historians we met, the museum owners, the tourism players, and explaining all. So have a good Friday, everybody. I'll see you later on. Bye.